Welcome back. The head of Business Unity South Africa, Sipho Pityana, says the time for moaning is well past. He's called for a genuine partnership between business and government. Pityana says the level of inequality in South Africa is now an economic risk. He was opening the inaugural Business Economic Indaba convened by Business Unity South Africa, which was also addressed by President Cyril Ramaphosa today. Sipho Pityana joins us in studio now. Great to have you with us,
Francis, good evening to you and your viewers.
So, I don't think it's far-fetched to say many South Africans roll their eyes when they hear of another summit, Indaba, Lekgotla meeting. All this talk about an economy that is in the doldrums. Why was this necessary?
This was necessary. By the way, this is a promise we made to the President that we have real constituency that is hard at work addressing the issues that we were talking about as business in the Job Summit, in the Investment Conference, and the various other conversations that we had. In fact, this morning, one of the sessions was looking at what each of the sectors is looking to do to stimulate jobs, to attract investment, to address specific problems that are making it difficult for things to happen. So we've moved away from a broad, generalized discussion about what needs to happen. We actually are engaging with government to say, these are the things that make it difficult. Can we change them? Why does it make sense to have them there? And government is quite responsive. But the point that I was making about inequalities in society is that this partnership is not just about creation of a favorable environment for business to thrive. We are partners with government in ensuring that those that have been marginalized and have been left behind should also be included in the new trajectory of our economic growth. So small businesses, women, black people, and those people that have been marginalized in the economy must feel that the growth that we're talking about now will include them.
So you say business has made promises. You know, sometimes legislation works, BEE, you put in quotas, you put in targets. How many business leaders or boards, you're sitting on a few of them, are willing to say, we will voluntarily do this, we will upskill these people, we'll employ these people? It's always said that business does things for profits, and maybe that's okay.
Well, interestingly, today we had a presentation from the health sector. Health sector says you need additional doctors, and the state system doesn't have capacity to train them. So we have the resources, we have the capacity. We want to put an infrastructure in place for private medical education. We want to be able to train nurses. We want to be able... These are interventions that business feels it has excess capacity and it can be used to address the challenges that government is facing. So we have to have conversations about the inefficiencies that we're now encountering with regard to the skills development strategy that we evolved. Business is very frustrated with how it works. There's lots of money to do it, but it's actually not working the way it was designed. So those are the detailed discussions that we're having. Otherwise, you have business that is ready to take apprentices, to take learners, people who are coming out of universities, give them an opportunity to train.
But when will they do it? I mean, that's a nice practical example. So you need to train doctors. Should someone set that up and then companies contribute? When could it actually happen? Well,
you see, all of these are things that exactly the things that we're talking about. Now you say to us that we must train more people. Here, Mr. Government, the problem that we have with that is that where we are prepared and we have the capacity to do this, there are obstacles. Can you remove the obstacles so that we can do it? Those are practical things to actually take those agreements that we had reached to the next level of implementation. All of us are saying exactly what you're saying. We don't have to be going on analyzing the problem. As we convene at any given time, you would find that on any 5, 6, 10 issues that we talk about as the key issues that we need to do to move the economy forward, we will probably be aligned, whether you talk to business, labor, or government.
So why are those obstacles still there?
Those obstacles need to be removed. They are a consequence of bureaucratic inefficiency, protracted processes in government, and the President acknowledged that and said, we actually have to be practical. We must look at, when business says, here is a scenario, for you to get us to grow to 5% growth rate in this particular sector, these are the things that needs to happen. So we're quite specific about those things, and we are confident, we're left feeling confident in the conversation we had with the ministers that, in fact, they are prepared to to do those things, to make sure things move forward.
You were an outspoken critic of former President Jacob Zuma. You convened Save SA.
Yes.
Firstly, is that distrust that I think was open for all to see between business and the former administration, is that something of the past?
Well, President Ramaphosa has done a great deal to show his alignment with the voices in society that say corrupt, unethical conduct should not be the way we do business, should not be the way we run our country, should not be the way we characterize the leadership of all the various institutions. And the investigations that is undertaken in SARS, following through on the state capture and what has happened in the National Prosecution Authority, the changes that he has made, all of those things have narrowed the gap of mistrust particularly between business and government. And it locates us in a place where we feel that with a leader of that caliber and commitment to get things right, it would be extravagant for business to stand on the sidelines instead of holding his hand and work with him to make sure that things change for the better in this country. There
was a statement in Davos that South Africa essentially lost 9 years of life because of Jacob Zuma's administration. So you're talking about all these things, yet the ANC is still using him to campaign in KwaZulu-Natal. He's still a voice in the party. Various disgraced leaders still welcomed and used by the party in various capacities. Does that frustrate you?
It frustrates me to no end. I mean, it's quite contradictory. You can't say on the one hand that what happened in the past was a blemish. It doesn't represent what ANC is about. It's a violation of our social contract as articulated in our constitution, and the person who was at the helm of it is acceptable as an acceptable face of a campaign by ANC to win an election. It's an affront, it's offensive, it's unacceptable. But all of that said, the reality of the matter is that in government as business, we have to work with a government that is committed to the new agenda of ensuring that we have good governance in place, we deal with the scourge of corruption, we give our back to state capture, we enable institutions of good governance to do their work. And I can't tell you how much I'm waiting to see business people that have been in the forefront of some of this corruption being locked up in jail. We have taken what positions that we could. We've exorcised some of the organizations that were implicated in state capture and corruption. But it's not the same thing as seeing business leaders who've been involved in this corruption going to jail.
So the economic damage is there, if that statement is correct. When President Ramaphosa came in, it seemed like we were getting on the right track. Then the whole land debate came. I'd like your opinion, because there's some talk of actually defining which land will be expropriated. I'm still hearing that we're the bottom of certain investors' lists, that they want to invest in South Africa least of all. Do you think that that cry about insecurity is still there?
Well, the international market doesn't have an appreciation of the complexity of the debate about whether it can be done constitutionally and so on and so on. All they know, international investors that we appeal to, is that they've seen this movie somewhere else and its consequences were not good. So until we have certainty around this policy position on land, it's always going to be an overhang on attracting investments in our economy. From my perspective, from what I'm listening to in the debate, it seems that there's a big shift. There's an appreciation that you can't do reckless expropriation of land without compensation, and that's what the Constitution says anyway. That there are circumstances where it may be justified to do expropriation without compensation, but you can't do an open season of that expropriation without compensation. So from where I sit, with where the Constitution is as our legal framework, this debate was totally unnecessary. It's creating a negative overhang. So the sooner we resolve it and conclude it, the better for our country.
So is that one of the things you want from government? Clarity, maybe start the process so at least people know what the real, how it will unfold, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the key things that we want resolved. We have raised that with the President and Cabinet. We have raised it, made a submission in the parliamentary process around this legislation. We are quite clear that once you create an opening for expropriation without compensation, it is a close cousin to attack on property rights. It is a close cousin to opening gates for an absence of security of businesses. So that's what your international investors see. Now, international investors are important, and by the way, because we don't have enough savings in this economy locally to be able to invest in the things that we need to do. So we need to mobilize international investment. So their voice and their opinion and their attitude to public policy in this country is absolutely critical.
You give some warnings in your speech today. Inequality is an economic risk.
Yes.
What are you talking about there? An uprising? There are so many unemployed people in South Africa. Is that what you fear?
The destitution that you see on the streets of people who are looking for work, who are standing on street corners, looking for work, any type of work, who can't get it, it must be so that it leads to desperation and people resorting to other forms of protest. The service delivery protests speak to a people who don't have resources to do things for themselves, but depend on the state that is inefficient itself to deliver certain services to them. The more and more you have of people who are in that situation, certainly the explosion is not very far away.
Well, some people are feeling hopeless. We've got low growth, so that won't create jobs. A very complex global situation, unemployment still high. Are you feeling hopeless? I'm
not feeling hopeless. I think that if you look at the statistics, we were in Davos with the president recently, and the analysis says that where you are in the era of industrial revolution, fourth industrial revolution, 90% of African countries are not ready for it. South Africa is one of those countries that is better placed to actually enter the fourth industrial revolution strategically and reposition our economy in a way that would address these things. So we need to be single-mindedly focused that we need to grow our economy at 5, 6, 7%, and we need to follow through on things that we need to do to achieve that. There is no substitute to addressing these things than to grow the economy. An economy that doesn't grow will not address these things. An economy that grows has a greater prospect of addressing this.
And finally, how do you get that growth? We're looking at education, a leading indicator pointing to the future, not looking good.
Well, education attracts huge investment. Public investment in education is huge. Inefficiencies that are there require decisive leadership in government to deal with some of the structural problems that are self-inflicted. So pouring in more and additional money and resources in education is not necessarily the answer. So we need to ensure that we do the things that we need to do. But we also need to ensure that the TVET colleges that are there are properly functional. Everybody knows that they are doing a disservice to those that go through those colleges, and indeed they produce learners that have no qualifications that the private sector can make use of.
All right, so lots to fix, but the situation not hopeless, says Sipho Pityana, President of Business Unity South Africa. Back to Tsepiso.